Double dose of Jeff. What have you done to deserve this tonight? Woo! Only joking. One of my favorite movies growing up, and this would be where you all kind of work out the maths of how old Jeff is, was Indiana Jones. It was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, if you don't know who he is, that's absolutely fine. He was a fictional professor of archaeology, but he also went on dangerous adventures recovering ancient artifacts. And in the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones, he's trying to track down the Holy Grail. Now, my particular favorite scene that always made my heart race was the leap of faith scene. Okay? And Jim's going, yes, I know. You see, Indiana Jones, he is close to finding the Holy Grail, but he's come to this edge of a cliff. And he can see where he needs to go, the rest of the journey, but between him and that is a giant chasm. Now, he's kind of recollecting, he's remembering these ancient prophecies, and he's thinking, oh, take a leap of faith, Indy. Take a leap of faith. And he's now here going, I've got no choice. I have to just step out and hope that I will not fall to my death. Now, in this moment, you can see that he is sweating profusely. He is breathing much heavier. Is this it? And you can see it. He closes his eyes, he takes a deep breath, and he lands on a seemingly invisible bridge, and he carries on his journey from one side of this chasm to the next. This is a bigger drop than there was this morning. I just want to say that. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm being brutally honest, there are times in my relationship with Jesus where my faith can sometimes feel like this scene. That there is this giant chasm between believing who Jesus says he is and truly trusting who he says he is. One day I could be full of faith, singing my heart out, saying, I love you, Jesus. I trust that you are the healer. You're the miracle maker. But then life happens. And maybe my circumstances change. Maybe someone invites me to go relaunch a church in 3 months. And I'm saying in my prayers, I'm trusting you, Jesus. But my heart is a little bit more seeing is believing. Give me a sign, Jesus. Show me that you are here, that you are in it. Just a little sign. And maybe for you, your prayer feels a little bit bigger, a little bit too big. Maybe your life feels a little bit too broken or too much pain in it right now for you to hold on to that. Jesus, you're the healer. So we cry out, as we all do, show me Jesus. If you've joined us for the first time, it's great to have you with us. We've begun a new sermon series at Werbs. We started last week, and it's called Show Me Jesus. And we are seeking to learn more about who Jesus is. And we're doing that by exploring the signs and the I am sayings that we read in John's Gospel. Now, this is the second week. The second sign that we learn about is the healing of the official's son. But before we begin, there's a challenging question that we need to hold on to today. And it's this. Do I truly believe Jesus is who he says he is? In other words, do I believe him at his word? And I don't kind of want us to kind of see that question as a little flippantly. Because this question, we come back to it. It forms the trajectory of our life with Jesus. It's the trajectory of our faith with him. Do I truly believe he is who he says he is? Why don't you turn with me, if you've got your Bibles, your phones, or whatever, to John chapter 4, verse 46. And while we find that, why don't I catch us all up on Jesus' journey so far since the wedding at Cana. So last week, Phil spoke to us about Jesus. He was in Cana. There was a big wedding, and it was the first recorded sign that we read in John's Gospel, and it was the one where he turns water into wine. I think if you're going to pick a first miracle, I think that would be the one that I would start off with. That would be great. But in chapter 2, verse 11, we read this, that because of this sign, his disciples believed in him. Then after that, Jesus goes down to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. And in verse 23, we read this, that while he was in Jerusalem, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in him. Now here's the thing, here's the point. Jesus' reputation as a miracle worker was spreading like wildfire, and everyone was hearing about it. They were excited about it, and they were desperate to see this guy called Jesus performing these signs and wonders. Because when they saw it, they believed in him. But then in chapter 4, we get this interesting development. You see, on Jesus' return to Galilee after the festival, he travels through Samaria. Now, the Jews wouldn't travel through this region normally because they considered it hostile and unclean. Yet Jesus went through it, and we read about his encounter with a Samaritan woman at the well. But he also spent 2 more days there. And over this time, a whole bunch of Samaritans came to believe in Jesus. Not because of signs, but because of his word. See, they placed their trust and belief in who he says he was. Now, Jesus gets back to Galilee, and they are welcoming him with open arms and celebrations. Way, it's our boy, it's Jesus, come on in. You got any more of those signs and wonders for us? But see, John actually treats this with suspicion. Let me read this. Verse 46. Once more he visited Cana in Galilee, where he had turned water into wine. And there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. Now when this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. You see, when Jesus was in Cana the first time, there was a time of great joy and celebration. But this time, there's a time of great sorrow. You see, Jesus encounters this royal official who haven't heard all the stories about what Jesus had been doing, all the signs and wonders. He traveled all the way from Capernaum to Cana to see Jesus. Now, what do we know about him? Well, the text says he was a royal official, or some translations are nobleman. So there's a pretty strong indication that he worked for King Herod. And we're not really too sure if he was Jewish or if he was Gentile. But what we do know about him is that he was desperate. You know, this is a man who would have had wealth and money, the same thing, wealth, status, power, authority, yet all suddenly worthless. You see, his son was sick and dying. And he had run out of options. And so as a desperate father, he made this 20-mile trip. That's probably about 2 days. I've got little legs, so maybe 3 days, but who knows? But he traveled this to see Jesus and beg him to come and miraculously heal his son. I want to say this, that God sees our desperation. He knows our situation. He knows our situations that we've brought in tonight. And he knows the situations that we've left at home, because if we're honest, we feel a little bit too ashamed to bring them here in this space tonight. He sees the struggles that you go through if you're a single parent. He sees the loneliness that you're feeling because you've lost someone recently. He sees the hidden grief that you're carrying silently of your journey of childlessness. He sees you sitting at your desk, wondering what you're doing on this course that you're doing, thinking, is this right for me? And he sees that anxiety of counting the pennies just to put food on the table this week. See, God sees our situations. He sees our desperation. He is a God who is leaning in and listening. Now, some of you know my story. Just a warning, there might be a couple of triggers in some of what I'd love to share with you. When I was 10, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I spent about 6 months in hospital, hardly setting a foot outside the doors. Now, I wasn't raised a Christian, but I had a small seed of faith that there must be a God. There must be. I didn't believe really that much in God throughout my teens. But I remember the odd Christmas assembly where they shared stories about this Jesus who was the miracle maker. Jesus the healer. Jesus who came to save me from all that I was going through. I don't know if I saw that in my teens. I didn't see that when my parents' marriage was breaking down. I didn't see that when my cancer symptoms came back. I didn't see that when my dad tried to take his life. But I remember the cry of my heart saying, Jesus, the miracle maker, I really need you to be real. And I was desperate for it. Why? Because seeing is believing, right? I needed to see him do something. Jesus said this. He said this to the official, the royal official. He said, unless you people see miraculous signs and wonders, Jesus told him, you will never believe. The royal official said, Sir, come down before my child dies. You see, in the moment of this man's desperation, this dad who is begging for Jesus to do one of those famous miracles of his, please, only you can heal my son. You're our last hope. And Jesus responds with this seemingly harsh response, right? It feels like that, but you see, he isn't trying to snuff out this man's faith. No, he's trying to elevate it. He's saying, don't you know that faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see yet? Someone once told me that faith is spelled R-I-S-K, risk. It's not. It's spelled S-U-R-E, sure. But Jesus is asking, do you truly believe who I say I am? Because that's the faith I'm looking for. Do you believe me at my word? Jesus replies, "You may go. Your son will live." Let's just pause there a moment. Jesus says that to you. Whatever your situation is right now, what do you respond with? What's your response to Jesus when he says, "Go, it's going to be okay"? Would you hesitate? Would you question the hows, the what ifs? Would you kind of say, what if I'm too late? What if Jesus can't? What if he's not who he says he is? A few years back, my wife and I, Kim, we went to this worship conference. It was called Catch the Fire. And the easiest way to describe it is it was a night of just crazy, charismatic worship. We saw signs and wonders all over the show, and it was incredible. And I remember there was this one moment in the worship time where this girl just over here, she just went, "Ah!" And she kind of threw her glasses off. She went, I can see. You know, and I'm thinking, what? You know, just in the worship, she walked out of that place with 20/20 vision, and I'm standing there, you know, and, you know, anyone with glasses will be going, you know, if it can happen to her, you know. But you see, doubt crept in. And I thought, did I have the boldness to pray the prayer that she prayed? Did I have the guts to pray? And I'll be honest, I didn't. I doubted. Now I want to say this, that the opposite to faith is actually not doubt. There is plenty of room in our relationship with Jesus to question, to have doubts. But the opposite to faith is fear. Fear to act on our beliefs. Phil, can I get you to bring your chair up for me, please? This is not because I'm just feeling a little bit tired or that I want to get Phil on his feet. Thank you, good sir. See, faith is two sides of the same coin. There is one side is belief and the other side is action. Take this chair, for example. Now, I can look at this chair and I can believe that this chair is going to, looks pretty sturdy. I'm not a big guy. I'm pretty sure it's going to take my weight. I think I probably will sit on this chair. But that's not the whole story. To truly, truly trust and believe that this chair will do that is, I need to act on that. I need to actually sit on the chair. That's the test of whether I truly believe it's going to take my weight. That's the test. So I can walk away and I say, I believe that chair. That's a good chair. Recommend that chair. I need to act on that belief. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. See, the only way that power is released through faith is not just belief, but acting on that belief. I'm going to give this chair back because I think I'm going to stack on it. Thank you, man. There's a story in the Old Testament that I love. We can find it in 2 Kings chapter 5. There's a story of a man named Naaman. He was the leader of the armies for a king of Aram. Now, he had wealth, he had power, he had authority. What was his problem? He had incurable leprosy. Now, he had done everything, but nothing had worked to cure him. And during a raid, he raided an Israeli village and he captured one of the girls and he brought her into his household. And there was a day when this Israeli girl said to Naaman's wife, if only Naaman knew the God of Israel, he would cure him of his leprosy. Now Naaman was so desperate. He was so desperate, he would try anything. So he takes a bunch of silver and gold, about £3 million in cash. He took loads of horses, loads of chariots, and he marched to the king of Israel. Now, the king of Israel, seeing this host, going, you're not coming in. He's thinking he's going to invade this guy. And he's like, you're not coming in, mate. Go home. And Elisha, the prophet, got wind of this. And he said, come to me. So Naaman went to Elisha's house, and Elisha sends out, he doesn't even go out himself, he sends out his servant. He said, there's a message from God. And he says this, God says, dip yourself in the river Jordan 7 times, and then you'll be cleansed. Now Naaman flew into a rage, complete rage. He's going, how dare you? How dare you? I've traveled all this way and you don't even give me a miracle now. I expected you to come out of your house and wave your hand and I would be cured. Dip myself in your river Jordan. I've got better rivers back home. The Naaman's servants, they come alongside him and say, look, boss, we've come all this way. And it's not that much of an ask. Why don't you just give it a go? What's the worst that can happen? There's a Dr. Pepper advert, but yeah. So Naaman did. He did exactly as he was told. He dipped himself in the river Jordan. And after the 7th time, he came out completely cleansed, completely healed, skin transformed. And he said this, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. But imagine if Naaman didn't act on that. Imagine if he walked home. Imagine worse. Imagine he got to the 6th dipping and he went, this ain't working. This God, he ain't who he says he is. Jesus says, do you truly believe who I say I am? Then get in the river. Do you believe that I am the peace? In any circumstance, any challenge and tribulation, do you believe that I can give you peace? Get in the river. Do you believe that I can heal? Get in the river. Don't just believe, but trust, act on. Believe who I say I am and take a leap of faith. While this is the royal official, while he was still on his way, his servants met him with the news that his boy was living. When he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, the fever left him yesterday at the 7th hour. Then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. And all his household believed. You see, God has no limits, and he was more than capable of healing this father's son from 20 miles away. And here's the thing, John's gospel doesn't pretend that that's even the issue here. That's not what he's trying to do. This is just a normal day for Jesus. Yeah, Jesus heals, yeah. There was a bigger concern, a bigger issue that John was trying to get at here. And it was this, that Jesus wasn't just concerned about the son's sickness. He was concerned about the father's sickness who was standing right in front of him there and then. You see, his son was near death physically, but the father was near death spiritually. And the only hope that they had was Jesus. One of my favorite American pastors is a guy called Eugene Peterson. And he said this once. He said, the life of faith is a daily exploration of the constant and countless ways in which God's grace and love are experienced. The constant and countless ways that God's grace and love are experienced. And for me, that's kind of at the heart of these signs. See, they're not simply just something miraculous, but something that points and reveals something about who Jesus truly is. And all through John's gospel, Jesus doesn't want to be a case of mistaken identity. He goes out of his way to tell us who he is. And we get them in the I am statements. And in chapter 10, Jesus drops the mic. And he says, I am the gate. You're looking at me going, what? That's not the most comforting thing to hear, Jeff. But he says, I am the gate, and whoever enters through me will be saved. See, Jesus is painting a familiar picture to those first century listeners. And it's this. He said, when shepherds were out in the country hills, at night they were looking for a safe place for their sheep, and they would literally build their own enclosure with rocks and boulders, but they would leave this narrow gap. And as the shepherd at night, they would literally lay in that gap to protect their sheep. See, Jesus is making this statement of exclusivity. He's saying, I'm not a gate. I'm not a gate of many gates. I am the gate. I am the daddy of doorways. And if you go through me, you will be saved. That word that we have here that Jesus says, it has several layers of meaning. The first one is this, it's that it literally means protection. He's saying it, yeah, you'll be protected from those that would harm you. But the second one is this, it's I will heal you. Not just physically, but spiritually. I have come that you may have life in abundance. He's saying you cannot only believe I am who I say I am, but you can trust it because the Word became flesh. And he said, I am that Word. You can take me, you can believe me at my word because I am standing here in front of you. See, Jesus' purpose was that, to come into this world, to bring us into that presence of God. When we are desperate, where do we go? There is only one gate where we can enter and be healed and be saved, and it's in Jesus. I'm going to invite the band up, give you all hope. We are. As we follow this sermon series on Show Me Jesus, I'm not here to make anyone feel guilty. Yes, we want to see Jesus at work. We want to see the God who loves us and the signs and wonders and the healing and the reconciliation. We want to see that. But the question we have to ask is, do I believe Jesus is who he says he is? Because if we don't, we're never going to step into those moments of all that God wants for us. We're always going to be looking at the chair and saying, that's a good chair. You get to sit on it. Put your faith in Jesus. Why don't we stand? I don't know what you're desperate for today. I don't know what some of those fears are stopping you from really trusting Jesus is who he says he is. But just as the band lead us in this next moment of worship, why don't we spend these next 2 minutes just being honest with where we're at, what our heart is crying for, and the things that we're holding, the lies that we carry. Jesus, we believe and trust who you say you are. That you are the healer. That you are mercy. You are peace. You are love. Help us now, as this official did, to believe you at your word.